Khabib Nurmagomedov. Wow, what a fight. I just watched the fight. I'm literally watching the post fight interview with Joe Rogan at the end. And let me just say, I am a Khabib fan. Um, I was really looking forward to him fighting Tony Ferguson. I really am not a Tony Ferguson fan, to be honest. I think he's kind of a douchebag. Um, but Khabib fights Tony Ferguson, drops Max Holloway. Obviously, I'm a huge Max Holloway fan. I watched the fight that made me really believe in Max Holloway was him versus Lamas. He just pointed to the ground and just it was incredible. And his style of just getting into your face, the way he beat Aldo twice. You watch those TKOs back, and it's just like you could see why he beat him. It was like every time he would hit Aldo, Aldo would try to return, and then would kind of like take two jumps back, and then it would just be Max in his face. Boom, 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 boom. Keep it okay. Max Holloway, huge fan. Super excited, honestly, for Khabib to fight Max Holloway. I think Max Holloway could have beat him. I don't know. After watching the fight, I think Max Holloway could have beat him. Also a huge fan of Al Iaquinta. I think I like his just no fucks given kind of mentality. But I really didn't care too much about this fight because the two ones I cared about dropped. And I'm a Al Iaquinta fan, but it's not that important to me. I was a huge Khabib fan, and he started off the fight looking good. He started off the fight with those takedowns. Got a really nasty takedown. It's like the only way he got it was because there was no sweat. It was like right at the beginning because he was grabbing onto the single leg and just went right. He just got it right up there over the shoulder and just drove through. And then I was like, okay, Al Iaquinta, in my opinion, has a puncher's chance. He was cocked up and ready to go. You saw when the bell rang at the beginning. Al Iaquinta was ready to just throw hands. And Khabib took him down right away, smashed him basically the whole round, top control. Looked pretty similar to Barboza, honestly. Second round, boom, another takedown, right? I just watched the fight, so I literally, as I was starting this, Joe Rogan was taking the picture with the team. So I think the second round was the takedown. Then they come into the third round, and this is the third round is where the momentum changed, right? Because Khabib started to throw hands. He just started to trade with. He was like, well, I've tried these takedowns, and these single legs just aren't working because we're too sweaty. They're just slipping out, and he has such, Iaquinta had such a good wide stance. He was like, you're not taking me down without a single leg, and the legs are sweaty. The single legs, kaput. So. And he didn't have the strength to push through, probably. He probably didn't have the cardio, or he didn't want to expend the strength to really push through for a takedown, because it really seemed, and I'll be completely honest, Khabib was nowhere ever in danger on top control. He was completely dominant on top control, but I'll tell you what, Al Iaquinta was just slippery as hell. He couldn't be controlled. In the first round, it was a lot different because, again, I really think the sweat was a main factor in Khabib's dominance in the first round, because it really seemed like by the end of the fight, he would get Iaquinta into a good position, and then Iaquinta would body roll, and just go belly to belly, and he couldn't do anything about it. And one thing, I did think that Iaquinta was grabbing those gloves. I think he might have been digging his fingers into the Khabib's gloves, because Khabib's hands were just trapped. Al Iaquinta was doing very good with hand fighting, and he had his, it was both hands on that, the left hand of Khabib, and it was like lock. And I think, and one team Khabib was pushing his gloves back down, and I really do think that Al might have been putting his fingers down the gloves a little bit there. I'm actually watching the highlights right now. They're playing the highlights. So let me Okay, yeah. So that's the second takedown in the first round. So they got two takedowns in the first round, and he finishes strong with some heavy ground and pound, nothing really. And then he kept getting flattened out. Yeah, that was he was getting flattened out a lot. The jab was just there for Khabib. The jab was devastating, just crisp, clean jabs. Um, and so the third round comes in. And Khabib tries the takedown, doesn't work, and then he says, you know what, this jab's really hurting Al. This jab's really working. I'm just gonna keep standing. And let me just tell you right now, it was like significant strikes were like I think it might have been the 200s at the end to like 20. Okay, so Khabib was dominating the ground. He was dominating the striking. You just can't deny that. And Joe Rogan was just I love Joe Rogan, by the way. I love his podcast and I love his commentating. I really do. But he was really holding Khabib to this high standard, called him amateurish at one point. I'm like, wow, I don't know, that's a little too much. Khabib was, yes, his chin was high, but maybe his chin was high because he felt no danger. Iaquinta landed maybe less than 10 solid hits on Khabib. Like that would that you went, okay, that's a good hit. And he does that, he gets those hits, and it's like Joe Rogan goes, oh, typical Joe Rogan. I love it. But it's like, okay, like I realized the problem with Khabib here, right, is apparently I think there's some statistic that he hasn't even lost a round in the UFC. He does not show striking, and he doesn't really get hit a lot. And everyone always says, oh, Michael Johnson. I think that is significant until you really look at it when, he got clipped, but he ended the round on top control and just getting like an absolute beatdown. He didn't get clipped. I'm sorry. And so, you talk Michael Johnson. So that's about it. For significant strikes wise, like Khabib in danger. So you don't have every other fighter. You have okay, that's the kind of power that will rock them. So you kind of have this, you have this mentality when you watch them, which fighters, will get rocked, by what, you kind of can feel it. At least I do. And at no point did I feel that Khabib was in any danger. And without him being rocked, you don't really know. So that's why Joe Rogan was kind of giving him a hard time, I think, because Joe Rogan doesn't really know what hurts him. So he's kind of got to go by this, and he's holding him to this kind of like invincible standard. I don't know. I think both Dagestani fighters tonight, Khabib and Zabit, Nurmagomedov Sharip, I think. I love him. I've followed him since he's going to the UFC. The name escapes me right now. I'm all hyped up from the fight. I'm sorry. But he put on a clinic at the beginning and then towards the end of the third round, it kind of looked like he was done. Like at the very end of the third round, it looked like he had nothing left to give. And maybe he was kind of watching the clock and was like, okay, like his adrenaline he kind of had the adrenaline dump because of the end of the time, because it looked like he was really looking at the clock at the end. And I think he was really surprised at Bochniak's resilience. And so you have that, and then you have this where Khabib stands, and you think, okay, maybe he's suffering some cardio, but I don't think it was a cardio issue at all. I don't think he wanted to do the takedown because it wasn't working enough. Because you saw at the end of the first round of Barboza and Khabib, and it was, you could see it already. Okay, at the end of this round, it was the same kind of dominance, about like 4 minutes of top control, and he had a little bruise under his eye. Okay, I think Khabib was like, well, I'm not really doing what I want on the ground here. He's really slipping around, and towards the end, he was really slipping around, and he was tagging him up on the feet. He was really lighting him up with that jab, was just melting Iaquinta's face. It was like he was wearing a mask. And I think Joe Rogan was giving him a hard time, kind of thinking like this invincible, excuse me, this invincible kind of guy. And I think that's a little unjustified. I think this fight was a great performance for Khabib. I think, I don't know. I think he showed off. I think he wanted to show off some striking too. I think he wanted to say, "Hey, like I can strike with you." You know, I think, I don't know. I think Conor McGregor, I think Tony Ferguson, they gotta like this fight now. They gotta have a little bit more confidence after this fight. But also, you gotta think like really, I'm doing the same thing. I'm doing the same thing right now as we speak. I'm kind of holding Khabib. Maybe not at all, because really, what happened in that fight was Khabib was never in danger. He never was tagged. He never was hit hard. He never was really staggered. He might have been stunned slightly at sometimes with those clean rights and that left hook. But you got to look at this and you got to think like, if this was a fighter who's coming off a few losses, you got to be like, wow, what a dominant performance. If Khabib came off a loss, you would be like, wow, he looked really good. I don't know. I think this is good for Khabib. I think this is really good for Khabib. And I think that he could. I think he could be a very dominant champion. He's got to shore up that chin. I think that was a notable thing. But I think they got to chill out on the standard. Joe Rogan's got to chill out on this kind of god complex for Khabib. I think he really likes him though, so I don't know. That's it today, boys. I would like to do more of this. There's a new the April 14th Poirier fight's coming up. Maybe if this gets any kind of traction, I will release another one. So if you want me to do the Poirier fight, you liked you liked what I had to say, please leave a like, subscribe to the channel. Thank you guys. Have a good one.